You're the mum of a trans daughter who's now 25. So you've got a very personal reason for feeling passionate about this issue. A lot of parents will have read this story and be concerned.
I would imagine that they would be, based on the narrative that they're hearing, which is essentially based around the fact that transgender girls are an issue and are a safeguarding issue and a threat. The actual reality is very different from that, and actually trans girls are far more at risk of abuse, prejudice, and we know that from the statistics around self-harm and suicide.
I think the issue is around the fact that girl guides are 10 to 14 years old, and you may have a transgender girl who still has, obviously, a male body. And there is, I'm sure you will say, totally unreasonable concern about that mix in an exclusively girl
Why
group.
is it unreasonable, that concern?
Well, if you think about it, generally trans girls have issues with their body. The reason that they are identifying as female is because they don't identify with their body. So actually they are far more likely to have issues around the fact that they have still got a male body. And the fact is there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever to say that trans girls are a threat and that any issue around abuse has ever happened.
Doesn't have to be a threat, though, does it?
And this policy is now, this is a couple of years old. This isn't a new policy. This is something that's been around for quite some time. And it just seems that every time there's an opportunity to have a go at trans girls, I mean, these are children. These are children who want to be with their friends.
Caroline Farrow, you don't agree. Why?
OK, well, firstly, as you pointed out, you know, a trans girl still has a male body. And it's not about saying all trans people are rapists, but actually they've still got a male body. They may or may not be on puberty blockers, which chemically castrate children. So, you know, you may have somebody with a fully functioning male body. You put girls and boys in the same tents together, in the same sleeping quarters. If you have a school trip, a residential trip, you always segregate out the sexes because one sex can impregnate another. It doesn't necessarily have to be rape or abuse involved. The other thing to remember is that actually, although this policy has been around for ages and ages, supposedly, it was buried very deeply on the Girl Guiding website. And it was only when the leaders raised concerns and said, hang on a minute, this is a safeguarding risk. I think most parents would be unhappy. And the other thing that, well, there's two other points. I mean, this new policy excludes religious communities, people of faith. It excludes girls from those communities. It also excludes, very importantly, girls who may have been subject to sexual abuse and need safeguarding.
Susie, can I just say, we're not talking about excluding transgender girls from guides. The policy is simply that parents should be aware of this mix, but that these guide leaders say, well, why can't you tell parents?
But actually,
because you've talked about the fact that we're talking about children here.
We're talking about
and when
children.
we talk about children who are under 16, and their parents have a right to know things which might affect them, don't they?
Well, yeah, but what you're doing is you're picking on a marginalised group of children who have already been subjected often to abuse within their own within their environment.
But perhaps you would tell parents so that their girls can be more understanding.
You think that's going to happen? In actual fact, what does happen more often than not in these situations is that what you're doing is you are othering those children. What you're doing is you are pointing out their difference.
But they are different.
Yes, I know. And
you
actually,
can't pretend
no,
they're
I'm not pretending.
Different.
I'm not pretending they're not different. What I'm saying is, across equality,
you can't pretend this is not unusual or out of the ordinary. And if there was anything else that was unusual or out of the ordinary, parents would be entitled to just be informed and to make their own decision.
So you mean, as in, if we were talking about 20 years ago, whether or not a child was gay?
I have a real problem. OK, here's my problem. My problem is with this self-identifying element of all this, right? Where we had recently a case of a male rapist.
Right, OK. Can we move away?
No.
This is about children. Girl Guides is about children being allowed to be children. And children, girls, trans girls who are girls, being allowed to take part in much the same way as everybody else.
Kids of that age on a school trip are segregated, but not allowed to share tents and things, right? I know this from my own experience with my kids,
that's fine,
right?
but trans girls are girls. Therefore, on school trips...
But they're girls in boys' bodies, right?
They go into the girls' spaces because they are girls.
Right.
I mean, the bottom line is...
But they're girls in boys' bodies.
Yeah, but that doesn't... What, so...
You don't think it matters at all?
So, essentially, because you have a penis, we should be worried about what you're going to do with it. Is
well,
that what you're saying?
The case that you didn't want me to say, which is an adult... Well, I know it may annoy you, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Yeah.
There was a male rapist in the news only last week who self-identified one day as a woman, got transferred to a female prison and began attacking women there because he's a male rapist. So the idea this is not a concern because of age.
I'm not saying that's not a concern.
Right, it is a concern.
That person
Self-identification
is a criminal.
can be misused.
That person is a criminal, OK?
Right.
And that's one case,
Right.
That person is a criminal. And within the prison service, there is the right for... And let's be honest, there are lots of female prisoners who are also... violent and aggressive and abusive. And the fact is that the prison state has the ability to put somebody who they would consider to be in the male state. And they didn't. So they basically let down the women prisoners that this person attacked. But that's not what this is about.
Caroline, Susie said that parents shouldn't have the right to know because it makes those transgender girls other. It makes them feel separate and discriminated against and super scrutinised. Why do you think it is important for parents to know?
In order that it's quite simple, so that they can give informed consent. And to actually go back to Piers' issue about self-ID, OK, so if Piers tomorrow decided he was going to be Perselina and put on a dress and, you know, you identified as a woman, Girl Guiding's policy would allow you to be a girl guiding leader. Now, my daughter was in both Rainbows and Brownies, and on her first O-Leave, I've checked with her, she said I could explain this. On her first O-Leave, which is an overnight, they were up very late and they had drinks and all sorts, and she wet the bed. And the next morning, you know, she was helped with her intimate care by a female leader. Now, I would be personally very concerned somebody who was identifying as a female, who wasn't necessarily a female,
So
helping.
again,
And the other thing, Susie,
we're conflating.
No, we're not.
A
We're not.
sexual predator.
No,
with
we're not.
somebody
But
who
bear in
is
mind,
in this position.
bear in mind there are already
here's-
safeguarding. Can I just say, Piers,
Yeah.
there are safeguarding holes already. So recently, we've had a convicted offender, a man called David Challoner, who advised the Green Party on their transgender policy. He was a scouting leader, and he's been imprisoned for 22 years for raping and torturing girls.
But
He was a scouting leader.
Here's the point I was
And
making.
he's a man.
No, but here's the point I'm making.
He's not trans.
Here's the point
There's
I'm
no
making.
link to
In
trans.
every other aspect
He has a link.
of school life,
He's got a
right?
transgender
But
daughter.
here's the
That's
point. In every aspect of school life, there is segregation of sexes, right? There just is. And the idea that you can just wake up one day and say, right, I feel like now I'm not a boy, I want to be a girl. I fully respect people that go through the whole process, the journey. It takes years. If you go through that, you have my absolute admiration. It's a very tough thing to do. However, at the early stages, when you may not even be completely sure, the idea that you just enter a female environment where at schools you would be segregated, that causes parents concern. Why should those parents
And as
not
Caroline
be
says, it's
at
not
least
just
allowed to be
children.
informed?
So where
It's
are they
adults.
segregated?
I've got a
When you're
girl,
saying
my daughter's nearly 7.
segregated,
I'd like to know. I'd like to know.
whether or not...
It wouldn't make me bigoted or prejudiced. I'd just like to know.
Because she might come back with questions, and if you didn't know, you wouldn't be able to answer them.
So when you're saying questions, what you're talking about, I mean...
A question
bearing
like,
in
does
mind-
a woman have a penis? No, she doesn't.
Bearing in mind that children in these circumstances, trans girls who are in this position where they are sharing spaces with other girls, they're friends.
Yes.
You know, it'll be their friends.
And then if that girl...
They
if th-
don't
those-
Friends, but
have...
on a school trip, they wouldn't be allowed to be together
Yeah,
in
they
a
would.
tent.
No, and
That's
a
the
brown-
point. They would. Under the Equality Act...
No,
They
no,
would,
no.
and girls are seen as girls, and they are meant to be treated as girls, and trans girls are girls. So there is no...
But the
Okay, but
parents
let me-
would know.
Okay, the
wouldn't they?
European Court of Human
Wait a
Rights.
second. Let me ask.
Sometimes, but that's a decision mainly for the parents of the trans girl to make.
What about this issue? So last week, Credit Suisse, right, congratulate Pips Bunce on being listed on the top 100 female executives list in 2018. This is their official Twitter account, right? Pips Bunce says, I'm truly honoured and humbled by this award, blah, 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 right? Pips Bunce is a guy called Philip Bunce who he identifies on his own Twitter biography as a proud father and husband, but he occasionally dresses as a woman. And because he occasionally decides, I'm feeling like a woman today, he's on the list of the top 100 female executives in the country, even though his Twitter biography says, I'm a proud father and husband. This self-identifying thing is problematic, isn't it? Because that clearly puts all the genuine female executives who list on their own Twitter bios, I'm a female, at a disadvantage, doesn't it?
To be fair, again, what's this got to do with Girl Guide?
It's all about self-identification, which I think is becoming, it's becoming a bit of a fad. And unfortunately, people are, I think, exploiting it in a way that I feared from the start.
In Ireland, it's been there for over 2 years. Malta, Denmark, Argentina, there has not been a single case of a trans person abusing that right.
Okay.
So what is essentially happening here is scaremongering about a possible outcome.
OK, we've got to leave it there.
It's
an interesting debate.
Not ever.
OK.